All right, hello everyone, and welcome to today's Lunchtime Learning webinar. I'd like to thank you for tuning in. My name is Brennan Woodruff. I'm the Director of Sustainability at New York State DEC, and I'm our co-lead on the Green New York Council. A couple housekeeping things before we get started today. First, everyone is on mute. You can type your questions into the chat box as we go along. So if you do have questions at any point, type them into the chat box. We're going to get to those at the end of today's presentation. I'm hearing there's an echo. So let me see. Yep, is that better? Is there an echo still? All right, so we're good now. Thanks everybody for letting us know that. So we'll get started here again. Thank you everybody for tuning in today. My name is Brennan Woodruff. I'm the Director of Sustainability at New York State DEC, and I'm also the co-lead of the Green New York Council. And a couple housekeeping things before we get started today. Everyone is on mute, so if you do have questions as we go along, please type them into the chat box. We will get to all questions at the end, but make sure you type them into the chat box. This webinar also is being recorded and it will be posted on the Green New York website afterwards. So if you do want to see something again or some of the slides, you want to share it with a coworker, you can share the web page from the Green New York site with them and we'll have a recording up there in a couple days. Also wanted to share a fun fact with you as well. I was going through the registrations today and we've now had over 1,600 unique registrations for the Lunchtime Learning webinar series. So thanks to all of you for tuning in, sharing it with your coworkers, and spreading the word. I think that's absolutely fantastic. Our next Lunchtime Learning webinar is going to take place on Tuesday, June 8th at noon. It's going to be on DEC Info Locator, and that's going to be with the great Kathy Kittle from DEC. It's going to be a fantastic presentation. It's a great tool, and I've really enjoyed using it. I think you're going to enjoy that as well. So today's presentation, this is not our traditional presentation on this series. We're normally focusing on specifically kind of sustainability related topics. We've tended to stay away from recreational based, but I think this is a really important one. This is a fantastic project that's recently been completed, and it connects so many communities throughout New York State. And I think one of the big things about tying recreation with sustainability is that the more people spend time outside, the more they get to know a specific piece of nature and see it change through the seasons, the more of an appreciation they have for it, and the more they're likely to want to take steps to preserve it and protect it. So I think it's really important to hear today the work that Andy and his team have done to give so many access to the outdoors that helps them appreciate nature more and hopefully want to take steps to preserve it as well. I know I was lucky growing up. There was a stretch of the canal trail down by German Flats before it was the Empire State Trail that I was able to use, and that really helped me appreciate nature a lot more, seeing that same piece of land and that same stretch of river and canal every day, seeing it change. It was really kind of a formative thing. So I really enjoyed that, and I know a lot of people have been using the path. I still get dispatches from my father regularly about how aggressive the Canadian geese are on it. So Andy, if you have any suggestions on the Canadian geese on the path, those would be appreciated. But without further ado, I want to hand it over to the director of the Empire State Trail, Andy Beers. Take it away.
Thank you, Brendan, and thank you all for joining today for this presentation. Just a quick introduction of myself. I work for the Hudson River Valley Greenway, which is a small state agency. As our name implies, we are focused on conservation, recreation, trails, economic development, and sound land use planning in the Hudson Valley. Our offices are tucked into the 4th floor of 625 Broadway here in Albany. And I have been the director of the Empire State Trail. The Greenway is overseeing the trail statewide for now, in partnership with New York State Parks and other state agencies. Prior to that, for 10 years, I worked at New York State Parks, where I was very involved in parks and trails issues. What I'm going to do today is give a maybe 20-25 minute overview of the Empire State Trail, weaving in some comments about sustainability, but highlighting the trail as a whole. And then, obviously open it up for questions, comments, and to the chat and so forth. We have a Empire State Trail website. You can see the web address there, or if you just Google Empire State Trail, will come up as one of the very first items. There's a host of information in there, planning studies, documentation, but also it's a public-facing website, and so it includes an online map where you can zoom in and see the precise trail location anywhere in the state and descriptions of each segment, reports, all sorts of other information that's available to you there. The Empire State Trail was launched in January 2017 when Governor Cuomo announced the initiative in his State of the State address. And he also, at that time, included $200 million in his executive budget for creation of the trail. And that funding was subsequently adopted in the New York State budget, enacted in April of 2017. And so for the last 4 years, the New York State and our partners have been sprinting forward to bring this project to reality. The trail is pictured here. It has 3 major legs. There is a Hudson Valley section that starts at the tip of Manhattan at the Battery, looking out over New York Harbor and riding right past the Freedom Tower World Trade Center site, weaves north through the Hudson Valley to Albany. And then there's a Erie Canalway Trail leg that starts technically in Waterford and Cohoes and runs west for 350 miles to Buffalo. And there's a Champlain Valley section that continues north along the Champlain Canalway Trail and then through the Champlain Valley. On this map, sections that are green are off-road trails. They are rail trails or canalway trails, 10 feet wide, with a paved either stone dust or asphalt surface, relatively flat grades, and so they're accessible and welcoming to bicyclists and pedestrians of all ages and abilities, from serious long-distance bicycle riders to families with young kids and training wheels, from long-distance runners to walkers to bird watchers to people pushing kids in strollers. So it is non-motorized off-road trail. The sections in yellow, conversely, are places where there are no opportunities today for rail trails or canalway trails, and they are on-road routes. They are designated on the shoulders of public roadways, and they're really intended for experienced bicyclists that are comfortable riding adjacent to vehicle traffic. So you can see on the map through the colors, the Champlain section does have some lengthy, some very nice off-road trail segments between Cohoes and Whitehall, but most of the Champlain section is a on-road bicycle route. The main off-road trail route is New York City to Albany, Buffalo. That's 550 miles of trail distance, of which 85% now is off-road trails. The benefits of, why did New York State invest $200 million in the Empire State Trail? These are the primary goals: healthy outdoor recreation, getting people outdoors to safely ride and walk and run, and the value of this trail and trails in general has certainly proven out over the last year plus of the pandemic. Trails provide a place for safe and socially distanced outdoor recreation. They've just proved to be this tremendously popular asset, places for people to get out in small groups with family members, friends, and get outside, exercise, rejuvenate their spirits. There's a lot of emerging research out there that trails not only obviously provide for physical exercise, but there's a very measurable benefit to people's sense of well-being from being outdoors on trails or in parks in general. Community vitality. The trail runs through many of New York State's urban areas, many of which are where they are because of either the Erie Canal that was created in 1820s or because of railroad routes that are no longer active. And so it goes through to the Poughkeepsies and the Kingstons and the Hudson, New Yorks and Albany and Schenectady and Amsterdam and Utica and Rochester, Syracuse, Buffalo, and many smaller towns and villages along the way. So it is part of an effort to, a broader effort to revitalize and support our communities across the state, as well as tourism-related economic development, and particularly bicycling, where long-distance bicycling is a rapidly growing tourism activity in New York State. It's part of alternative transportation. While the trail is primarily a recreational asset, there are plenty of people that are out there, whether they're riding to work or just to the library to drop off a book. So It's an alternative, non-motorized, carbon-free transportation route as well. And just civic engagement of providing opportunities for people to get out and meet their neighbors and volunteer on the trail and feel good and positive about the communities they live in. The Empire State Trail is what we call a co-branding initiative. It stitches together more than 20 regional and local trails, each of which retains its own name and its own distinct character. So the Erie Canalway Trail and the Champlain Canalway Trail, the Corning Preserve Trail in downtown Albany, the Wallkill Valley Rail Trail, the Dutchess Rail Trail, and on and on. So each of these places still exists as its own regional trail. What we have done is expand and build out the network and then create safe on-road connections where necessary to create this contiguous 750-mile route across the state. When we were planning the trail in 2018, we did a study based on trail count information at a variety of trails and locations along the route and other trails in New York, and statistically projected that across the whole 750-mile route, and estimated there would be 8.6 million visitors to the trail annually now that it's complete. What's happened during the pandemic is trail use has surged across New York, across the country. One of our partners, Parks and Trails New York, collects data with trail counters at various locations, particularly on the Erie Canalway Trail. And during 2020, trail use visitation increased, depending on the location they counted at, between 20 and 50% above historical trail usage. So, and we're seeing that surge continuing on this year, absolutely. So certainly the Empire State Trail during 2021 is going to attract more than 10 million visitors this year without question. To create the trail, we were fundamentally a construction project, and you can see the list of state agencies that participated in planning and constructing trail segments, many of the off-road trails, the additional trails that were created, and as well as New York State DOT leading the way on improvements to on-road sections with bicycle lanes and signage and shoulder widening projects and other things. And we also had 17 local government projects. So basically our program, working with our partner state agencies, we managed this roster of 58 construction projects, which were all completed over 4 years. And on December 31st, Governor Cuomo announced that the statewide 750-mile Empire State Trail route is complete. You will recall in late December, there was not yet any snow in most of New York, so this was a ribbon-cutting first-day hike and bike we did on a section in Rensselaer County. The handsome gentleman in the middle is me. To the left is Eric Kulisade, Commissioner of State Parks, and to the right is Scott Keller, Executive Director of the Greenway. So I can't underestimate the work and effort that the many state agencies and our local government partners completed, particularly in the challenging pandemic year, to complete all projects on time by December 2020. The $200 million state investment leveraged an additional $92 million in local, state, federal, and even private sector investments in the trail. In total, 180 miles of new off-road trail were created. Some of those are long linear trails, and I'll give some examples of those coming up. Others were only short sections, maybe a mile of new trail, but that eliminated a gap that existed because of an engineering or real estate issue to build out this continuous trail network. And as I said, New York State DOT, on its part in particular, was responsible for making strategic improvements to 170 miles of the on-road route. We also have installed wayfinding signage on all 400 miles of existing trail, plus all the new trails. So you can now follow from New York City to Albany to Buffalo, or up to the Canada border at Rouse's Point. You can follow the trail that's physically marked on the ground. In terms of specifically sustainability elements, I'll just highlight some of the pieces that are really on point to today's session. Brendan mentioned the benefits of outdoor recreation, for physical health, for mental health, but also for just connecting people to nature, to places in their communities. These trails become a cherished asset where people are out there. And we really see out there, one thing about the rail trails and canalway trails in particular is they bring new demographics to these trails that aren't, we see people out there that are hikers and bicyclists and they're out there all the time. But you see a lot of people on these trails that they're not out there necessarily hiking on backcountry trails. They're not out there riding their bikes along roads. They're people of various ages, ethnicities, family members, various states of, physical fitness. They're out there, walking. They pulled the old Schwinn out of the back of the garage, got it running, and they feel comfortable riding on these off-road trails. And so we are building this greater appreciation for nature and the natural world through these trail networks. There's also a big emphasis through the project and also continuing on this year on connecting trails and bike lanes. Many cities are really investing in their bicycle and walking infrastructure, City of Albany, City of Syracuse, New York City, you name it, because we do want, to the maximum extent possible, people to be able to access the Empire State Trail and other trails from where they live, not to have to get in a car and drive or put their bike on a bike rack and drive to a trailhead. We want to maximize opportunities for people to ride or walk from where they live to get on these trails, even if it means they're starting on urban bicycle lanes along city streets and then getting to the trail that way. And it's also building that complete street network that also is not just about recreation, but as I said earlier, about alternative transportation to get people out of their cars into carbon-free commuting. On that front, in terms of zero-emission transportation, people are riding to work and to school on the Empire State Trail. It's not the primary use, but absolutely happening. People are taking, shopping errands, short trips, or riding to a school events, whatever it may be. We see people enthusiastically embracing bicycle and pedestrian activity, particularly as we make it safer. And then there's this whole focus on not only walkable and bikeable communities, but also on complete streets and road diets. Road diets, if you're not familiar with that term, there are some of our projects on the Empire State Trail. It is taking physically built roads where we need to route the Empire State Trail on an existing roadway and reducing the number of travel lanes to create more space for protected bicycle and pedestrian routes on the same road corridor. Having a transportation network that isn't just solely focused on automobiles, but is amenable to people walking and riding as well. Interestingly, one of our strong supporters on this effort has been AARP, and because they have a whole focus on walkable and bikeable communities, because our seniors are very, very interested in having safe places where they can walk and ride, that they're not on streets. And so they've also been very much a kind of an interesting partner that's been very much engaged in our effort. Another kind of sustainability piece that is a little less obvious, but I think is worth mentioning, is we are adaptively reusing these abandoned rail and canalway corridors. And many of these, these rail trails, these canals, they were built a century ago or more before there were any environmental regulations, right? And so there was certainly environmental impact and environmental damage that occurred when those rail lines and canals were built, modifying water courses, in particular railroads. They just kind of blasted through, and so every time you got to a wetland, they would just fill through the middle of it and bring in material and create a prism to put the rail bed on. Well, that environmental impact happened often a century ago or more. That means in terms of building new trails, we have very minimal environmental disturbance that's occurring because we're taking advantage of adaptive reusing those corridors and with minimal new environmental impact. Another item I just wanted to throw in, I get a lot of questions about e-bikes. Are e-bikes allowed on the Empire State Trail? Are they allowed more generally on trails? In 2020, spring of 2020, New York State enacted e-bike legislation, the first time that actually regulates and allows e-bikes. And the state law allows class 1 and 2 e-bikes on public roads, posted up to 30 miles per hour, and it allows them on trails, but only if affirmatively approved by the entity that maintains and operates that particular section. So, for example, state parks and the New York State Canal Corporation, both of whom administer long sections of the Empire State Trail and other trails, they have approved e-bike, Class 1, Class 2 e-bike use on their respective improved trails. So that's a new activity that's out there. The last thing is some of our projects have very site-specific sustainability initiatives and components. The Albany Hudson Electric Trail is one of the projects the Greenway built, a new 36-mile rail trail on an abandoned electric trolley line, now an electric utility corridor in Rensselaer and Columbia counties. And so we, made efforts to do things like we do plant shrubs and other plantings along the trail to create visual buffers between the trail and adjacent property owners. All of our landscape plantings are native species that are well adapted and relatively deer resistant to our environment, and fit into the landscape without requiring any significant maintenance. We experimented with reusing asphalt millings in certain trail construction sections. We learned a lot from that. They work well as not as a final trail surface, but we did use more than 9 miles of the trail the sub bases reuse of asphalt millings. We also did have some wetland impacts to construct the Albany Hudson Electric Trail because the trolley had been abandoned for 90 years. Drainage had failed in certain areas where they had cut through hillsides. Those areas were not state regulated wetland, but they did meet the Army Corps delineation rules and regs. So we ended up doing a really nice project to mitigate that by recreating and restoring a tidal freshwater wetland in Schodack Island State Park. I'm just going to riff really quickly through some pictures to give you a sense of some of the new projects. One of the most vexing gaps in the Erie Canalway Trail was a 14-mile section of the trail in Syracuse, where if you were coming from Rochester, you got to Camillus and the trail ended, and then as you were headed east, you had to work your way 14 miles on some pretty challenging bicycling through Syracuse before the Erie Canalway Trail started again in DeWitt on the east side of Syracuse. So New York State, DOT, Onondaga County, Honeywell Corporation as an environmental benefit project under their large Onondaga Lake cleanup project. We did a series of new trail construction projects. There is now a continuous and safe 14-mile route through the city of Syracuse. And this bridge in particular, Onondaga County built this spectacular bike ped bridge across the CSX tracks, which now means you can get from downtown Syracuse on a bike. You can ride out to the state fairgrounds now and a flat 2.5-mile route, as opposed to driving from downtown Syracuse, for example, to get to the fairgrounds. These slides are more or less ordered kind of west to east across the Erie Canal and then down the Hudson Valley. In Herkimer County, Canal Corporation constructed 9 miles of new trails in multiple projects that eliminated what were on-road gaps where people needed to ride or walk on the shoulders of 55-mile-per-hour state roads. In this case, along the Mohawk River, which is also the Erie Canal, other sections weaving along New York State DOT right-of-way to create the off-road route. Some of these shots were obviously prior to 2020, the pandemic. It's kind of hard to imagine we did this. Maybe someday we will again. This was 2019, a new 5-mile section of off-road trail. It was actually a rail trail in Amsterdam, in Schenectady County. DOT, many of the gaps that existed that remained on particularly the Erie Canalway Trail were because of significant engineering challenges. The New York State DOT and Rotterdam and Patterson has wrapping up now 2 projects to construct new bike ped tunnels under active rail lines, which you can imagine is challenging work. Again, to eliminate these off-road gaps. There is now continuous off-road trail from you start just on the west side of the city of Schenectady, and you ride all the way west to Frankfort, New York, in Herkimer County, and you will be on off-road trail now the entire way. Canal Corporation also built some significant new trail sections, off-road trails along the Champlain Canal. Pictured here is this is still under construction last year, now complete. This really terrific new a 10-mile trail that goes from Fort Edward to Fort Anne. If you're ever up that way, bring your bike. It's a great place to go. As I said, in addition to these kind of these rural trails, there's a number of our projects were in more urban areas. The City of Watervliet did a local project funded with state and federal funds to extend if you're familiar with the Mohawk Hudson Bike Hike Trail, it starts in Corning Preserve in Albany and continues up to Watervliet. It goes under 787, and then you were dumped out onto Broadway. There's now another 1.5 miles of off-road trail that is fit in along Broadway and the 787 corridor, for example, to create that urban community, a safe way for people in that community to access the trail. My organization, the Hudson River Valley Greenway, constructed a new 36-mile rail trail that goes from the city of Rensselaer to the city of Hudson in Rensselaer, Columbia counties. And that trail was completed late at the end of last year and is getting a huge amount of use this spring, which has been very gratifying. Generally speaking, most sections of the Empire State Trail are not plowed in the winter. A few sections are where they go through urban areas, the Corning Preserve in Albany, or obviously the west side of Manhattan in New York City. Some cities do plow their sections, but most of the trail is in the winter is really just available and for whatever condition it's in. And in these years that we have now, the winters we have, there's a certain number of days a year you cross-country ski or snowshoe. But there's also typically, parts of the winter where the trail is clear of snow for bicycling and walking as well. Another project, again, this was a municipal project in the city of Kingston. The city very committed to expanding its bicycle and walking infrastructure. The city, using largely state and federal grants, constructed 2 1-mile trail sections that are located directly in the city of Kingston to provide a way for urban trail users to get out. Maybe it's just a short section they're out for a quick walk or ride, as well as provide safe passage for longer distance bicyclists on the Hudson Valley route. There's another pre-pandemic ribbon cutting Walcott Valley Rail Trail, one of our nonprofit partners, the section between Kingston and New Paltz, upgraded an old trail by installing new stone dust surface and safety fencing and improved road crossings. I mentioned road diets. This is a project in Westchester County where New York State DOT reconfigured State Route 100, where, again, there were long sections of off-road Westchester County rail trail north and south of Newcastle, but bicyclists were forced out onto the shoulders of Route 100, a high-speed road for these 2 1-mile sections. DOT, working within its existing right-of-way, reconfigured traffic lanes and built these guide rail protected sections so that people of all abilities now can enjoy the trail. Another one of our partners, Metro North Railroad, a mass transit organization entity, constructed on a former inactive rail line in Putnam and Dutchess counties, a new 23-mile rail trail from Hopewell Junction south to Brewster. You can see the railroad tracks are still in place, although they are not active. They are abandoned, and this was originally a 2-line track, a major east line, the Maybrook Line, as it was called, that is no longer active and unlikely to ever support rail use again. That would take tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in investments to make it available again for rail use. But it is being rail banked by Metro North, so it could theoretically become an active rail line in the future, but now it's repurposed for now as this really spectacular off-road rail trail. Did a fair amount of interpretive materials along the trail itself that just tell the history of these areas. We also have natural resource interpretation about wetlands and rare species and other things, just to kind of add to the experience for trail users. And then finally, we did to welcome trail users and to make them feel safe and welcoming to new demographics that might not necessarily be used to being out on trails. We created 45 gateways and trailheads. Top left in this picture is the beginning of the trail or the end at the base of Manhattan. Over the top of that, you're looking at the new Freedom Tower. And on the top right is 550 miles later on Lake Erie and Buffalo Harbor State Park, the other ceremonial beginning and end of the trail. All right, just to finish up my slides here, What are we doing now in 2021? We are closing out a number of projects. We sprinted to complete construction, many projects November, even into December of last year. And so, as you can imagine, for outdoor construction, there's a fair amount of tidying up of landscaping, signage, pavement markings, other things going on. Pretty much all the work will be done, 100% done by this Memorial Day. We're almost there. We're doing a lot of promotion and marketing. There's something called the Empire State Challenge. If you're interested, if you Google, you'll find it, which is we're doing in partnership with the Boilermaker race organization, Utica. It's a virtual online. You sign up, you pay $25, you get a T-shirt, and you log your mileage anywhere in the state, preferably on the Empire State Trail, but you can do it in your own neighborhood. A nice way to, it runs through July just to, challenge people to get outdoors and moving. We're doing a map, we're doing a guidebook, all these things are underway. Another 2021 initiative, I'll have a few pictures in a second, is there were some existing sections of the trail of 400 miles that already existed that are in poor condition, they're old, and so we are resurfacing and rehabilitating those. And then finally, we are coordinating with our state agency partners. There is going to be a new CFA, Environmental Protection Fund grant round this year. Just announced that it's opened with grants due at the end of July. That didn't occur in the CFA program. Grant round did not occur in 2020, but it's back for 2021. And although not officially announced, New York State DOT is also going to be announcing soon a 2021 Transportation Alternatives Program. These are federal funds that come to the state for construction of a bicycle, pedestrian, and other non-motorized or alternative transportation facilities. So with the trail done, a lot of these new programs will be focused again on creating these connecting trails and bike lanes and other ways for people to get from where they live to the Empire State Trail, which we sort of consider the spine of New York State, the spine trail of New York State. Here's just some pictures of some of our rehabilitation projects that are now in design. Most of these will be bid this summer for construction in the fall. Again, some older sections of trail. This is 20 years older. So Stone Dust section on the left that was originally 10 feet wide is now grown in. So we're in total, New York State and our partners we are this year, this summer and fall, we'll be doing projects to resurface a total of 50 miles of trails, anywhere from a mile to 7 or 8 miles in length across the state to bring the entire system up to a consistent world-class standard. I mentioned the website. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but if I know you can't read this. This is just meant to explain how it works. There is a series of descriptions of each trail segment, narrative descriptions, that kind of information. You can zoom way in. Here's the Kingston Point Rail Trail, so you can see exactly where it goes through the city of Kingston, designated parking areas along the route, and so forth. And then in we're doing another project this fall to further enhance the website. Those will go live in the fall to provide information that people can access. They're looking for information, for example, about lodging within 5 miles of the trail. We have information about campgrounds and campsites within 5 miles of the trail, but people on longer distance trips are looking for where do I stay, and so we're working with I Love New York, for example, to add that information to the website. We're also going to be making it work a little bit more like Google Maps, almost, where you could, on your mobile device, you'll see a little blue dot of where you are, so you can use your cell phone or your mobile device as actual trail navigation, clip to your handlebars or while you're walking along the trail as well. So that was a sprint. Thank you for bearing with me. I'm going to stop here and open it up to questions, comments, ideas from the audience.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andy. That was absolutely fantastic. So we've got a number of questions here. The first one here is, how do you deal with issues with motorized vehicles such as ATVs or snowmobiles?
Yeah, so that is a common question, right? When you create these trails, how do you keep the ATVs and the dirt bikes and the snowmobiles off? I will say on snowmobiles, most of the ATVs and dirt bikes are not allowed anywhere, of course, on these trails. There are a few sections in central New York and a few along the Champlain Canalway Trail that are lower use, more rural areas where snowmobiles are allowed in the winter, although that's the exception to the rule. On our website, we have a map that shows where snowmobiles are allowed. A couple things. I mean, first is many of these corridors, the old canalway beds, towpaths, the old rail trail beds abandoned. They are kind of like the Wild West, and they often do have a fair amount of illegal ATV or unauthorized illegal ATV, dirt bike use on them, UTVs, you name it. Construction of these trails generally displaces most of that use because ATV, people are out there, they see other folks on ATVs or dirt bikes, and they either assume it's okay to be out there or they pretend they think it's okay. Once these trails are constructed, they're formal, there's plenty of no motorized vehicle signage. Most people respect that and do not, they go elsewhere. There's always some people that ignore the signage and, ride ATVs on the trail. The next thing that happens is many of those people get displaced by what I call social pressure. You ride an ATV out there in the daytime on these trails. There's a tons of trail users out there. They're yelling at you. They're taking their picture. They're sending, a copy of, your picture off to the local police department. So that tends to just, people literally just kind of, the public self-patrolling, self-enforcing these, not in a legal way, makes a big difference. And then there are a few places where there can be persistent problems with ATV use. It's hard to get off 100%, but we do have our DEC rangers, state police, state park police, local PDs. We're absolutely necessary. We're able to occasionally mount, just a 1 day or 2 day enforcement effort. And people they're not bringing or trailering ATVs or snowmobiles to these trails to ride. To the extent you have this problem, it's nearby residents that are disrespecting the trails and they're going from where they live to get on. Often you can figure out where they are. You just follow the ATV or snowmobile track to their residence, right? And then you have a local PD department go knock on the door and, we got your eyes on you kind of thing. So basically the good news is on these trails is we have more than 1,000 miles of rail trails, canalway trails in New York State. And the areas that have persistent, unauthorized, illegal motorized use are actually few and far between. And so, by and large, this seems to work out because legal enforcement is difficult, but it's by and large not a problem.
Awesome, thanks. And we have more questions than I've ever seen come in before, so we're going to try and just run through these. Are the on-road sections of the trail permanent, or are there sections that are under consideration for construction as an off-road trail?
There are some opportunities for additional off-road trail, and we're going to continue to pursue those. I mean, basically, what we built through this initiative was everything that was basically shovel-ready, where there was public ownership of a right-of-way where we could put the trail, whether it was a rail bed, a canalway bed, or in some cases just using the right-of-way of state DOT right-of-ways where we could make room to build a shared use path protected but next to the road on state ownership. There are certainly areas, you saw the yellow on the map, there are more opportunities to chip away. We're never going to get to 100% off-road, but there are places where it'll be a longer-term effort. I mean, often, you can see on Google Map or you can conceive of a way to get there, but the ownership is not necessarily in public ownership. That corridor, maybe it's a privately owned utility corridor or other types of ownership, or often there are just significant engineering or wetland permitting issues. It's bifurcated by the thruway, or it's bifurcated by significant wetlands and permitting issues. So there are some places where our program, and I think in this CFA round, we'll see some additional applications, more for planning grants. These are going to take some number of years to conceive and build. We've exhausted the Empire State Trail funding. So that was a long answer to a short question. The goal certainly among New York State and our many local partners is to chip away, chip away, chip away. Another example down in New Paltz, right? There is the trail running east of New Paltz towards the walkway over the Hudson is complete, and north up to Kingston is complete. There is a 2-mile section in the village of New Paltz where right now you have to ride along a village and town street, Henry W. Du Bois it's called. The town and the village secured a state grant from DOT, a TAP grant last year, and they are planning construction of along their right-of-way a separated 8 to 10 foot wide shared use path that will eliminate, for example, that 2-mile on-road section in New Paltz. So slow but steady progress will be the mantra going forward.
Mm-hmm. And next question here, can you provide any further information about the federal funds received by DOT for the TAP program, or is there some place where people can go find more information about how the funds can be used?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you Google Transportation Alternatives Program or New York State DOT TAP, you will find general information about that grant round. It hasn't formally opened or been announced yet, so there's nothing to see yet, but you know, my understanding from DOT is sometime in the coming weeks or months, there will be a formal public announcement. It'll certainly be on DOT's website. There'll be the usual press releases. I don't know the amount yet, but those can be significant federal dollars for these kinds of projects. So they will just keep an eye out, and you'll see announcement about the next TAP grant. And then, as I mentioned, many of you are familiar with the CFA program. There's State Parks and Trails Grant Program. There's Department of State Waterfront Revitalization grants. Canal Corp has grants. Sometimes the ESD Economic Development grants. Some regions of the state have made prioritized use of some of those for bike and pedestrian infrastructure projects. So that grant round just opened earlier this week, I think it was posted, or late last week, and those applications are due at the end of July this year.
Mm-hmm. And another question here, is there trail etiquette information on the website or posted at Trailhead?
Yeah, so we do have on the website, there's a trail safety button at the bottom of the website. We've also created a trail safety flyer. It's an 8.5 by 11 PDF. It just hits the key issues. The primary, I mean, generally people are very respectful about using these trails. These are what in the transportation or recreation world we call shared use paths. So they're typically 10 to 12 feet wide, a minimum of 8 feet. That is sufficient width to accommodate bicyclists and pedestrians sharing. It's shared use doesn't mean vehicles. It means bikes and pedestrians going in two directions. So that 10 feet design standard is sufficient to accommodate that. There are some issues on the trail. The two biggest issues I would say we have on the trail itself is you get these older guys like, you know, my age who still think they're going to ride in the Tour de France someday, and they're on the $2,500 bike with their spandex, and they're riding too fast for conditions. Or you get people that got their headphones in and they're just, you know, they're walking but they're not paying attention. So certainly we certainly, there are some places signage is posted. We're out there with that etiquette, just encouraging people to, you know, particularly ride your bike at the appropriate speed. And then at road crossings, you know, the modern standard is all crossings, there's a stop sign for every trail crossing for trail users. You know, respect those stop signs, stop. Yes, you have New York State law says vehicles have to stop for pedestrians in marked crosswalks, but having the law on your side is cold comfort, right? So ride or walk defensively, and particularly pay attention at road crossings is a key point.
Mm-hmm. And we've had a couple questions about the website, so I'm just going to put that in the chat box now so that everybody can access that. Another question here is, are there any plans to expand the trail network to other parts of the state, such as Long Island or the southern tier of the Finger Lakes?
Yeah, so two things on that. We do consider the Empire State Trail to be what we call sort of the spine trail for New York State. If you go on the website and start zooming in on the map, we have included on the map a number of what we call connecting trails that are rail trails or canalway trails. The Genesee Valley Greenway Trail that runs from Rochester all the way down through Letchworth State Park toward the southern tier, for example. In New Paltz, there's the O&W Rail Trail comes in, and Ulster County built the new Ashokan Rail Trail, spectacular rail trail in the Catskills. So we identify those things that are true kind of bikeable, walkable trails on the website, promote them in that way. And then in Long Island in particular, when the trail was planned in late 2016, leading up to the governor's announcement, we did look at Long Island. There are bike lanes and some off-road trails that go through Queens and Brooklyn and Queens, but you get to Nassau and Suffolk right now, and there is just no east-west opportunity at this time for a trail. There are the trails that exist on Long Island. There are significant trails. Many of them tend to run north-south, not east-west. There's a great new completed bicycle trail down the Ocean Parkway, Jones Beach running out to Captree, but that doesn't really connect anyhow. So we did not, the trail does not, as of today, extend onto Long Island. If you're familiar with the group Trust for Public Lands, and there's another group, New York Bicycling Coalition, they did a study on their own and published it in 2019. You can find it on Trust for Public Lands website, where they came up with a concept level plan for how you could route an Empire State Trail from Manhattan through, all the way out to the tip of Suffolk County out at Montauk Point. Their route would be about half off-road trails, primarily built on east-west running utility corridors. Some of them are old rail beds, other utility corridors, the power and gas lines that exist. The other half would be on-road connection, so it would be about 50-50. It's a long-term vision. They estimate it would take, $120 million of public investment. It could be more to build out that network. None of that funding is available today. But what TPL, Trust for Public Land, has done is State Parks awarded a grant to TPL in 2019, a $600,000 planning grant to really flesh out what would be the first 20 miles, which would span Nassau and Suffolk counties. It would run from Eisenhower County Park in Nassau through Bethpage State Park and continuing east to blanking on the name of the state park on the far side there. And so that's still, it's still very much at the proposal stage. They're using that grant to really flesh out engineering studies. That engineering report will be available in 2022, and then the state and Trust for Public Land, the counties will need to identify funding. It's estimated $20 million to build that first section. So it's a long-term vision, but people are working on a Long Island solution in general.
Mm-hmm. And is there any coordination with public transit agencies in terms of bringing bus routes to trailheads or, more bikes on buses type of things?
Yeah, I would say there's our program. We don't have the bandwidth to kind of affirmatively engage in that issue statewide. I'm obviously aware of there's a lot of activity on that front, and City of Albany, City of Syracuse, many cities are, they're adding bike racks on the front of buses, for example. One good thing that did happen this year is a concerted, many years effort by the bicycling community, advocacy community, bicycling, and with support, very strong support from New York State DOT. Is a change in Amtrak's policies. So it used to be there are 20 Amtrak stations on the Empire State Trail route, literally in the Hudson Valley across the Erie Canalway Trail and the Champlain section. There are 20 Amtrak stations within a mile of the Empire State Trail route. It just plays out that way. It used to be if you wanted to take your bike on Amtrak, you had to put it in a box, put it in the baggage car, and then some of the stops, you got to Amsterdam, New York, and there was no baggage service there. You couldn't even get your bike back off the bike box, right? So Amtrak just created this year, it's on there, it's on when you go on Amtrak to make bike reservations. They created capacity on their trains now where you can wheel your bicycle right onto the passenger car and have specialized little mechanisms to lock your bike. And so you can literally take it across the state or wherever you're going, and then get it back off very quickly. There is a small fee. There's limited capacity. You have to reserve ahead of time, but it's a great new way. Again, all three sections of the legs are well serviced by Amtrak in particular.
That is awesome. And the more we can make those multimodal connections, the easier it is for people to use low carbon transportation networks.
Yeah, and I would say, Metro North also allows people, you can take on the Metro North, the MTA trains. You can take your bikes on those during non-rush hour. I don't know, probably now it's all around non-rush hour. There are a limited number, just the way it works out, unfortunately, of MTA stations that are right on the Empire State Trail, but that is another option for New York City residents.
That is fantastic. And that answers a question somebody had about if you ride to the other end of the state, how do you get back without riding? So Amtrak is a great option for that.
Yep.
Another question here. Oh, yep. Is the trail being submitted to Google Maps for their bicycling layer and navigation?
Yes, that is part of our website enhancement project. Is I did a little futzing around. You don't just get Google on the phone, right? And so that is one of our tasks for 2021. What you find today is that Google Maps largely has mapped most of the existing sections of trail, but they're labeled Dutchess Rail Trail or Erie Canalway Trail or whatever. And then the brand new construction is hit or miss about what's been mapped. So we're tasking our consultants. They're just getting started this year. That will happen this year. We want to have the entire statewide route appear on Google Maps, and we want to have it co-labeled where it'll say Empire State Trail / Erie Canalway Trail or Empire State Trail / Wallkill Valley Rail Trail. So that is in the works for this year.
That's great. And another just comment that came in on technology that I think is kind of an interesting idea is a lot of these bikes that are, kind of exercise bikes that are capable of, they have the big screen and you can go on rides and stuff along like the California coast or something. Is there ever going to be an option to go for a ride on the Empire State Trail along any section of it on those kind of technologies?
That is the first time I've heard that question. I don't know. I'm old school. I ride my bike or I walk. I don't know. I mean, it's something we'll have to bounce to our marketing team about. I don't know how those get created. I mean, Google has, on Street View, I don't know how you engage them to do that, but there are certain trails that they put their Google cameras on the back of a bike and or they get a permit to drive down a trail section, these rail trails, canalway trails. So there are sections that are certainly mapped on Street View. You can go down the trail now on Google Earth, but that's the exception to the rule. So first we'll just get it labeled on Google Maps, and perhaps through that relationship we'll see what it would take. It would be great to have them Street View the whole 750 miles, frankly, and make that available for the kind of use you're talking about.
Yeah, and if you're looking for anybody to do that, let me be the first to raise my hand to go out and map those for you.
Yeah.
So one last question here before we wrap up, because we're going long here. Is there any way for people to report, it's kind of a two-part question, kind of poor situations on the trail, if like a culvert broke or something like that? And how is maintenance handled on the trail? Is that done through the state or is that done through the local municipalities?
Yep. So in terms of reporting issues on the trail or just questions about on the Empire State Trail website on the homepage at the bottom, there's a contact us. You click a button and a little form opens up and you put your name, your email, your address, your question, and that's monitored daily. We've gotten several thousand comments and questions that's come into the Empire State Trail website since it went live last fall. And they get monitored here and they get either answered by the Greenway, by me, or one of our staff, or if it's they get bounced on to the Canal Corporation or whoever. So that is one way to just report issues or concerns. In terms of maintenance, there is, the trail is still, as I said, it's a co-branding exercise. Every section is owned by either a state or local government agency. So State Parks owns sections, and Canal Corp owns sections, and Dutchess County owns the Dutchess County section. So each of those entities that owns a particular regional section is responsible for the maintenance and ongoing administration of those sections. There's not an Empire State Trail maintenance program per se. What we are doing, again, as I said, we're partnering with a number of municipalities to particularly on the kind of capital repairs to try to help them with those things, which are often, particularly in rural parts of the state, are beyond the ability of a local government to take that on. So there are some resources for the capital maintenance, but the day-to-day mowing and trail patrol, litter pickup, that kind of stuff is really done by this combination of state agencies, local government, and we have volunteer groups on the Albany Hudson Electric Trail. In Columbia County, a new group, the Columbia Friends of the Electric Trail, a nonprofit incorporated. They are doing, we donated mowers and string trimmers and trailers. We give them a grant. They're out there with volunteers mowing and maintaining that section. The Rensselaer Land Trust, another nonprofit, is maintaining the section in town of Schodack and Rensselaer County. And then we have municipalities, East Greenbush, Village Town of Nassau, Village of Kinderhook, that are also maintaining their section. So there's been a lot of enthusiasm and engagement around this trail. And it's a good volunteer opportunity because people like to get out there and do something very tangible in their community to work on a trail like this.
Yeah, and we did get a comment in here from somebody saying that during a spin class ride, the Manhattan section of the trail was actually part of it, which is kind of cool. So part of it is actually out there already. And with that, we are running long on time. Do you have any final thoughts to leave people with today?
I just encourage people, get out there, use the trails. You never regret going out and biking or riding. Find the time, and I know we have a variety of state agencies that participate in this call, and again, a big shout out. I mean, the Greenway, we were the home to this program, but this is a true classic example of many, many state agencies, including DEC, jumping in enthusiastically to help build and create this trail across the state. So it's been one of those real success stories about interagency cooperation in New York, and that's greatly appreciated.
Yeah, and thank you very much. This was a fantastic presentation. Everybody, this is recorded. It's going to be on the Green New York website afterwards. I'll put the address in the chat box here so you can view the slides there afterwards. Also, as a reminder, our next webinar is going to be on Tuesday, June 8th at noon, and that's going to be on the DEC Info Locator. So thank you very much, everybody. Have a good day, and we'll see you next month.